Hi, I'm Stephanie Jaworski of joybaking.com. Today we're going to make mini Pavlovas, and this is what it looks like. So what we have is a round of sweet meringue that has a crisp outside crust, yet inside it's wonderfully soft like marshmallow. And then we're going to top that with a dollop of whipped cream, and then on top of that we're going to put some fresh fruit. Today I'm using blueberries and strawberries. So the first thing that you will need to do is to preheat your oven to 250 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 120 degrees Celsius. And then you'll need a baking sheet, and you want to line that with a piece of parchment paper. Now, what we're going to do is, I like to make a template when I'm making my Pavlovas. So that way, every Pavlova is exactly the same size. So what I do is, I have a 3.5 inch, which is 9 centimeter round cookie cutter. This is going to make 8 mini Pavlovas. And then I like to use a felt marker, because what we're going to do once we make the template is flip it over, and I want to be able to see the rounds. So just put your cookie cutter and then draw your circles, which I've already done. So you have 8. And then you flip that over. Now I like to just put, you can use a little oil, or I'm using just one of these sprays on my pan, just so that the parchment paper sticks. So when I'm forming my Pavlova, it doesn't move around. So there we go. So Pavlova, we're starting by making a meringue. You can do, if you have a stand mixer like I have here, you could use your whisk attachment, or really you can just use a hand mixer for this as well. First thing you will need is 4 large egg whites. That's 120 grams. You separate your eggs while they're still cold, much easier to do, and then just put it in a bowl, cover it with some plastic wrap, and you want to bring your egg whites to room temperature. They will whip up much higher and better if they're at room temperature. So maybe an hour, I'd say. And make sure when you're making any meringue that your bowl is really clean, free of grease, because that's another thing that will prevent, if you have like butter or something, a film, it will prevent it from whipping to the full height. So what we're going to do is just put our egg whites right in here. And I'm going to add a 1/2 teaspoon, 2 grams of cream of tartar. Cream of tartar you can find on the spice aisle of your grocery store. It helps to stabilize your whites, and it prevents us from over whipping our meringue and then drying it out. Now, if you can't find it, some people say they can't find it, you can just leave it out, or you could use just a 1/2 teaspoon of lemon juice. That worked the same way. So what I'm going to do is just put my mixer on medium-low, and we're going to beat the two together until we get soft peaks. So that's going to take several minutes, so be patient. Okay, so that took quite a few minutes, just as a reference point. So this is what you're looking for, just kind of soft. I don't know whether you can see that, just very soft peaks. So now, what we're going to do, you will need 1 cup, which is 200 grams of, I'm using super fine sugar as opposed to granulated white. Now, the reason I'm using super fine is so that it will dissolve faster into the meringue. You could use granulated white, but what I do is I take 1 cup, 200 grams of granulated white sugar, I put it in my food processor, I just process it for about a minute, and then I have superfine sugar, so I don't go out and specially buy that. And what we're going to do is, we're not going to add all of our sugar at once. We're going to add it gradually. You want your mixer speed on high, medium-high, and I'm going to add it just a tablespoon at a time, just gradually, so that it'll be absorbed into it, because we want a really nice smooth meringue. When you put it through between your fingers, you don't want a gritty feel, you want nice and smooth. So adding that sugar gradually will help that. And then we're going to beat it until it's really thick and really glossy, really wonderful. So I'm going to start by just putting, a couple tablespoons, and we will start. Okay, we are done. So, let's see. See, it's nice and thick, stiff peaks, shiny, but always just take a little between your fingers and rub it. And you don't want to feel, it shouldn't be gritty. If it's gritty, just beat it a little longer, because it can be deceiving. A lot of times you think, oh, that's done, but then when you rub it between your fingers, it's still a little gritty. And that means that all of the sugar has not dissolved into the meringue. So, I always find it, I love it, how you take egg whites and sugar, kind of just a liquid, and then you end up with this. It's wonderful. And now, I like to flavor my meringue with 1 teaspoon, 4 grams of pure vanilla extract. If you don't want your meringue to have a vanilla flavor, you can leave it out. You could add a different extract, almond or maybe a lemon if you want, but I love vanilla, so just going to beat that in. Okay, so we've done that. And then we're going to add a couple, sorry, a little noisy. It's really thick. We're going to add a couple unique ingredients here to a pavlova. Okay, I'm going to do that at home. You can scrape that off really good, but for the sake of time. So now what we're going to do, kind of unique, like I said, to a pavlova, we're going to add 1 teaspoon, 4 grams of vinegar. I'm just using a white distilled vinegar, and along with, I'll just put that in, and along with a half a tablespoon, just 5 grams of cornstarch. Now you may say, why are you doing that? That kind of is going to give us the unique texture of the pavlova with that crisp outside crust, and yet inside it's soft like marshmallow. I'm just going to fold this in. Now, like I said, I just used a white distilled vinegar. You can smell the vinegar, but there's not really any flavor. You could use a flavor like apple cider, maybe. So, essentially, that's our meringue. So now what we're going to do, we want to divide this equally. Some people like to put the meringue in a piping bag and pipe it. You could do that. If I had a cookie scoop, ice cream scoop, that was about a half a cup, I would use that, but I don't. So I'm just using a half cup measuring. I mean, the important thing is just to have both the same amount. You want all the meringues the same size, so they look all the same. It makes a nice presentation. Plus, they bake at the same length of time. So let's take about a half. I'm just going to show you one. So just put it, you want it about in the center of that round circle. And then you can, I'm just using an offset spatula, but just use a spoon. Just kind of press it down. You want to get all the air out. And just, use that circle as a guide and just kind of press it into a round circle. Like that. Smooth out. I mean, some people like to get fancy and make peaks, so I'll leave that up to you. So just do that, and I'm going to do that for the rest. Okay, so that's the last one. They don't have to be perfectly round. As you can see, they're kind of nicely shaped. Okay, so now we're going to bake our meringues. Essentially, when you bake a meringue, all you're doing is drying it out. So what we're going to do, I find in my oven about 50 minutes. So what's going to happen is it should stay pale in color. As you can see here, this is ones I baked the other day. They stay pretty white. And then what you have is the outside crust here is dry and firm. But I'm going to show you. If I break it in half, you can see it's nice and soft, kind of like marshmallow inside. So that's what we're looking for. So the outside becomes dry and just crisp, but you want it to stay pale in color. Now, if you start to see it browning at any point, so check your meringue as it bakes. If it starts to brown, then lower your oven temperature about 25 degrees Fahrenheit, 15 degrees C, because we don't want a little brown would be fine, but we want it to stay nice and white in color. So about 50 minutes, it could take a little longer, 50 to 60. And then when that time is up, what you do is turn off your oven, leave these in, turn off your oven and open the oven door, and that's going to let the heat out. And what we're going to do is let our meringue cool slowly in the oven, turned off. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back at 50 minutes when these are baked. I'll show you them, and then I'm going to put them back in the oven and let them cool down slowly. Okay, 50 minutes. So our meringues are done. So just put your pan, well, you won't be doing this, but I just put my pan on a wire rack. I'm just going to show you. As you can see, if I touch it, it's firm on the outside, it's dry, but still very light color. So now what I'm going to do is, like I said, I'm going to have the oven turned off. I'm going to leave the door slightly ajar, put these back in, and let them cool down slowly. You know, you can let it cool down several hours. Because what will that, and I'll just add, what that will do is it will dry them out even more. So you have a nice crisp outside crust, but yet soft inside. And I'm going to do that, and then when we come back, we will make our whipped cream and finish off our Pavlovas. So we are now going to finish off our Pavlovas. Now, I did let my meringues cool for, I would say, at least an hour in the turned off oven. You could leave it for several hours. Say, for example, you wanted them for supper. You could make them in the morning and just let them sit in the oven like all day and cool off. So now, for our whipped cream, I actually like to whip my cream by hand. I find it better to control. I don't over whip it, which I sometimes do if I use the mixer. But if you want to, in your stand mixer, you could do it with your whisk attachment. You could use a hand mixer, but by hand today. So you will need 1 cup, which is 240 milliliters, 240 grams of cold, heavy whipping cream. And that means that's a cream with about a 35 to 40% butterfat content. Or what that means is when I whip it, it will hold stiff peaks. Now, I like to add a little sugar to my whipped cream, just 1 tablespoon, 15 grams. You could leave that out if you just want plain whipped cream, or if you like a really sweet whipped cream, you can add more sugar. And then I like to flavor with just a half a teaspoon, 2 grams of pure vanilla extract. I like my cream with a little vanilla flavor, so actually we're making chantilly cream. And then I'm just going to whisk it by hand until stiff peaks. Okay, that looks good. One thing about whipping it by hand, your arm gets really tired, but good exercise, right? So that's our cream. Especially if you're whipping your cream in your stand mixer or even a hand mixer, if you do by chance over whip it, what you can do, you can save it. Just put a little more heavy cream in there and then whisk it by hand. So there is a fix for it. Now when I do mini Pavlovas, now I do have, it's the same recipe but on the joybaking.com website or our YouTube channel for one large Pavlova. And a lot of times when I do a large Pavlova, I put the cream on and the fruit and then serve it like that. But when I'm doing mini Pavlovas, I like people to be able to put as much cream and as much fruit as they want. This dessert is ideal if you were having company or backyard barbecue. And you could just put all your Pavlovas, your meringues on a platter and then have, like I have here, a bowl of your whipped cream and then your fruit. And then you let your guests serve themselves. So, and you could, just a side note, you could make the whipped cream ahead of time and then just store it in a covered container, several hours. And then if it does break down a little, sometimes you get a little water in the bottom, just re-whip it. So I'm going to show you, I will wreck one here to show you. So what you have is a nice crisp outside crust, but when I crack it open, it's nice and soft, like marshmallow inside. Wonderful. And you could, especially if you have low humidity in your house, you can make these a day or two ahead and store them at room temperature. Now, where I live, it tends to be a little humid. I store them in the fridge. I just cover them, store them in the fridge, and then bring them to room temperature, and I find just fine. So we'll put our meringue on the plate and a dollop of whipped cream. This is a good part about letting everybody serve themselves. If you don't want much whipped cream or if you want lots. And then the fruit. Really, any fruit that's in season. So when I went, the strawberries and the blueberries look really good, taste really good. That's what I'm using. Raspberries are good. Blackberries are good. Passion fruit is the traditional. You could use that. Kiwi fruit, peaches, nectarines. And even if, say, in the winter and the fruit's not very good, you could use serve with a lemon curd, or strawberry sauce, or raspberry sauce, chocolate sauce. So really, there's a lot of things you could do here. Oop, lost that one. Eat that. And some strawberries. I don't know about you, but I think that's a really pretty dessert. Perfect for the summer, but in the winter, anytime. And I sometimes wonder, do I spoon or fork? I guess if you were at a dinner party, you would want to use a fork. Personally, I like a spoon. What a treat. I mean, the sweet meringue, crisp on the outside, nice and soft on the inside. The whipped cream just goes with that. And then, I especially like a blueberry and even the strawberry, a little tartness to the fruit kind of offsets the sweetness of the meringue. I don't know whether there's a more perfect dessert, personally. I really enjoy it. So you must try this. And until next time, I'm Stephanie Jaworski of joybaking.com.